The concrete mixer's rumble echoed through the dawn silence as Sarah Martinez stepped onto her back deck, coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips. Where her pristine pool had sparkled just hours before, now lay a gray wasteland of hardening cement. But this wasn't random vandalism. This was calculated destruction by someone who knew exactly how to hurt her most, as she dialed 911 with trembling fingers. One thought burned through her shock. Her neighbor Helen Morrison had finally crossed a line there. Sarah Martinez stood in her kitchen at 6:47 a.m., watching through the window as her next-door neighbor, Helen Morrison, methodically snipped the heads off every single rose bloom that hung over the property line. The woman worked with surgical precision, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. Early hour. Unbelievable, Sarah muttered, setting down her coffee mug, harder than necessary. The ceramic clink echoed in the quiet kitchen of her craftsman-style home in the upscale Meadowbrook neighborhood. She'd moved here 18 months ago after her divorce, using half of everything she'd built with her ex-husband to buy this sanctuary. The pool had been her first major renovation, crystalline oasis where she could swim laps before work, where her 8-year-old daughter Emma could play safely when she visited every other weekend. "Mom, she's doing it again," Emma called from the living room, her voice carrying that mix of fascination and horror that children reserve for adult behavior they can't quite understand. Sarah joined her daughter at the front window. Helen stood in her immaculate front yard, measuring tape in hand, eyeing the small decorative fence Sarah had installed last month. Twice but Helen's face wore the expression of someone preparing for war. "Why doesn't she like us?" Emma asked, pressing her nose against the glass. Sarah's jaw tightened. It was a diplomatic answer, but the truth was uglier. Helen Morrison was 63 years old, had lived in the same house for 42 years, and had appointed herself the unofficial guardian of neighborhood standards. She'd made it clear from Sarah's first day that a divorced single mother didn't fit her vision of Meadowbrook respectability. The campaign had started subtly. HOA complaints about Sarah's outdoor Christmas lights being excessive, they weren't. Anonymous reports about her garbage cans being placed improperly, they weren't. Calls to the city about her pool construction violating setback requirements, it didn't. But this rose situation was different. This was personal property destruction, and Sarah had security cameras to prove it. Her phone buzzed. Her lawyer, Marcus Chen, pool inspection scheduled for 10 a.m. Make sure everything's perfect. Helen's filed another complaint. Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. Another one. This complaint was about excessive noise from the pool's filtration system. The woman had made it her mission to cost Sarah money, time, and sanity. "I'm going to talk to her," Sarah decided. "Mom, no," Emma said, recognizing the tone. Sarah took a breath, counted to 10, then 20. "You're right, ready for school." But as they moved through their morning routine, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was building. Helen's behavior was escalating. The rose incident felt like a test. How far could she push before Sarah pushed? Back at 8:15, as Sarah walked Emma to the bus stop, Helen emerged from her house with perfect timing. She wore a pale blue cardigan and pearls, her makeup flawless despite the early hour. "Good morning, Sarah," Helen said, her voice carrying the false sweetness of artificial honey. "I hope you're planning to address those roses today. The dead blooms are unsightly." Sarah stopped walking. "You mean the roses you cut off my property? I beg your pardon? I would never touch your property. I was simply maintaining my own garden. The branches hang over the fence." Emma tugged at Sarah's hand. "Mom, the bus. ... Sarah looked down at her daughter's worried face and made a choice. "Have a good day, Helen? Do hope everything's in order." Sarah's steps faltered. Someone has to look out for proper standards. The bus arrived with a hydraulics wheeze, and Sarah kissed Emma goodbye, her mind racing. Marcus had only scheduled it yesterday, and the city didn't typically notify neighbors about routine inspections. Walking back to her house, Sarah noticed Helen standing in her side yard, positioned to have a clear view of the pool area. The woman wasn't even pretending to garden anymore. She was just watching, waiting. Sarah's phone rang. "Marcus, Helen Morrison has filed a formal complaint with the city about your pool's compliance with safety regulations." "What kind of complaint?" "She claims the pool creates a public nuisance and poses a safety risk to neighborhood children. Also questioning whether your permits were properly filed." Sarah sank into her kitchen chair. Marcus, you handled the permits yourself. Everything was filed correctly. I know, but she's forcing the city to do a full compliance review. They find even the smallest violation, wrong type of fencing, improper drain covers, anything they can make you tear it out. Tear it out, Sarah's voice rose. I spent $35,000 on that pool. 3 times in the past 15 years, she's filed complaints that resulted in neighbors having to remove or modify major installations. That's ... double quotes. Sarah struggled for words. That's systematic harassment. It's smart systematic harassment. She knows exactly how to use the system against people. The question is, are you prepared to fight? Sarah looked out at her pool, its surface reflecting the morning sky like a perfect mirror. Emma had learned to swim in that pool. Sarah had found peace in its depths during the darkest days of her divorce. What do I need to do? First, the inspection at 10. Make sure everything's perfect. Then we start building a case for harassment. Next hour, cleaning an already spotless pool area. She checked the fence height, the gate latches, the drain covers. Everything was perfect because she'd built it to be perfect. At 9:58, a white city truck pulled up. The inspector, a tired-looking man in his 50s named Jerry Walsh, emerged with a clipboard and a skeptical expression. Ms. Martinez, I'm here about a safety complaint regarding your pool installation. Of course, everything's ready for your inspection. Jerry spent 45 minutes checking every detail. He measured fence heights, tested gate latches, examined drain covers and safety equipment. Sarah followed at a respectful distance, answering his questions, providing documentation. Well, Jerry said finally, I don't see any violations. Built to code, properly maintained, all safety features in place. He paused. To be honest, this is one of the nicer installations I've seen. Relief flooded through Sarah. Jerry glanced toward Helen's house. This job for 20 years, and she knows the system. My advice? Document everything. Every interaction, every complaint. Build a paper trail, because if this escalates, you'll need proof of harassment. Happening, she'd moved here for peace, for a fresh start. Instead, she'd inherited a war she never wanted to fight. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Pool looks nice. Ice forming in her stomach. She screenshotted immediately, then called Marcus. I just got a threatening text, she said, without preamble. From Helen. Unknown number. But who else would it be? Don't respond. Save everything. We're building a case. That evening, after Emma went to bed, Sarah sat on her deck with a glass of wine, trying to relax. The pool lights cast a gentle glow, and the water lapped softly against the sides. At 10:47 p.m., motion lights in Helen's yard flickered on. Sarah glanced over to see Helen standing at her side window, watching. Even in the darkness, Sarah could feel those eyes on her. She finished her wine and went inside, checking all the locks twice. At 3:22 a.m., Sarah woke to a sound she couldn't immediately place. A low rumble, like distant thunder or heavy machinery. She lay still, listening, but the sound faded. Must have been a true. The police arrived at 4:17 a.m. in a patrol car with muted sirens, their flashlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. Officer Janet Rodriguez stepped out first, a compact woman in her 40s with tired eyes that had seen too much destruction. To be easily surprised, her partner, a younger man named Officer Mills, whistled low as his flashlight beam swept across the concrete wasteland. Jesus, Mills muttered. Someone really wanted to make a statement. Sarah stood wrapped in a bathrobe, her hair wild from sleep, but her voice was steady. The concrete mixer is still in my neighbor's driveway. Helen Morrison, 1245 Elm Street. She's been harassing me for months, and I have documentation. Rodriguez's flashlight found the mixer, its drum still turning lazily in the shadows. That's not subtle. She pulled out her notepad. Walk me through what happened. Sarah recounted the escalating harassment, the Rose incident, the frivolous complaints, the threatening text. As she spoke, she could see Helen's house, every window now dark except for the side window where the woman had been watching. The curtains were drawn tight. Do you have the threatening text? Rodriguez asked. Sarah showed her the screenshot. Mills was already walking the perimeter of the destroyed pool, his flashlight illuminating the professional concrete work. This wasn't random vandalism, he called back. Someone knew what they were doing. This is grade A concrete, properly mixed and poured. How much would this cost to repair? Rodriguez asked. $35,000 originally. God knows what it'll cost to remove this concrete and start over. Sarah's voice cracked slightly. This was my daughter's pool. She's 8. She learned to swim here. Rodriguez's expression softened. We'll need to take photos, measurements, and we'll need to speak with Mrs. Morrison. As if summoned by her name, Helen's front door opened. She emerged in a silk robe and slippers, her hair in curlers, looking like she'd been roused from sleep. Sarah almost admired the performance. Officers, what's all this commotion? Helen asked, her voice carrying the perfect note of concerned neighbor. I heard sirens. Ma'am, we need to ask you some questions about what happened to your neighbor's pool, Rodriguez said. Helen's eyes widened in theatrical shock. Something happened to Sarah's pool. It's like, oh my goodness, what? Someone filled it with concrete mills, said flatly, and there's a concrete mixer in your driveway. Oh, that old thing. Helen waved dismissively. I've been having some work done on my patio. The contractor left it there yesterday. I had no idea it was going to be such a problem. At 3 a.m, Sarah couldn't help herself. Helen turned to her with wounded innocence. I beg your pardon. The concrete was poured at 3 a.m. I heard the mixer running. Well, I'm sure I wouldn't know anything about that. I'm a sound sleeper. Helen's smile was perfectly calibrated. Officers, surely you don't suspect me of something so ... destructive. Rodriguez studied Helen's face. Ma'am, we're going to need to see some documentation about this patio work. Contractor's information, permits, receipts, of course. Though I'm not sure why my home improvement projects are relevant to Sarah's unfortunate situation, because Mills said, walking back from the pool, this concrete is still wet. It was poured within the last few hours, and your mixer has the same type of aggregate residue. Helen's composure flickered for just a moment. I'm sure that's just coincidence. Concrete is concrete, isn't it? Actually, it's not, Rodriguez said. Different suppliers use different aggregate mixes. We'll be testing samples. I think I should call my lawyer, Helen said. That's your right, ma'am, but we'll need that contractor information either way. As the officers continued their investigation, Sarah noticed movement in other windows along the street. The Johnsons at 1251 were peeking through their blinds. Mrs. Chen from across the street stood openly in her doorway, phone in hand, probably recording everything. By 6 a.m., the police had taken photos, measurements, and concrete samples. They'd also discovered something interesting in Helen's garage bags of the same concrete mix. Receipts from the same supplier, and a small mixer attachment for a garden hose. Mrs. Morrison Rodriguez said, "We're going to need you to come down to the station for questioning." This is ridiculous, Helen huffed. I'm a respected member of this community. I've lived here for over 40 years. I would never, ma'am. Mills interrupted. We found your fingerprints on the mixer handle, and your credit card was used to purchase concrete supplies yesterday afternoon. Helen's face went pale under her perfectly applied makeup. I want my lawyer. That's your right. But you're under arrest for criminal mischief and destruction of property. As Rodriguez read Helen her rights, Sarah felt a mixture of vindication and surreal disbelief. After months of harassment, the woman was finally facing consequences. But the cost her pool, her sanctuary, her peace of mind, felt overwhelming. Mrs. Martinez Rodriguez said, as they prepared to leave, you'll need to document everything for the insurance claim, and I'd recommend getting a restraining order. After the police left with Helen in custody, Sarah stood alone in her backyard as the sun rose over the concrete wasteland. The diving board looked absurd now, a monument to destruction. She took photos from every angle, her phone capturing the evidence she'd need for court. Her phone buzzed. Marcus, I heard, he said. Are you okay? I don't know. I mean, she's arrested, but ... Sarah gestured helplessly at the destruction. This is insane, Marcus. Who does this? Someone who's been getting away with bullying behavior for years. The good news is, she overplayed her hand. Criminal charges are serious, and we have grounds for a civil suit that could cover damages, plus punitive awards. How long will this take? Criminal case, maybe 6 months. Civil case, longer. But Sarah, there's something else you should know. I've been digging into Helen Morrison's background. This isn't her first rodeo. Sarah felt ice in her stomach. What do you mean? She's been involved in similar disputes in 3 different neighborhoods over the past 20 years. Each time, she escalated harassment until neighbors either moved or capitulated. You're the first one who's fought back this hard. 3 neighborhoods. Yeah, she and her husband moved around a lot. Always sold their house within a year of major confrontations. I think she's been perfecting this pattern for decades. Sarah sank into a patio chair. So this is what she does. She terrorizes people professionally. It looks like it. But here's the thing: she's never been arrested before. Her previous victims just gave up and moved. You're the first to gather evidence and press charges. Lucky me. Sarah, I know this is overwhelming, but you're doing the right thing. Someone needed to stop her. After hanging up, Sarah called her ex-husband, David. Emma was supposed to visit this weekend, and she needed to explain why there was a concrete slab where the pool used to be. She did what? David's voice was incredulous. Sarah, that's psychotic. I know. The police arrested her, but Emma's going to be devastated about the pool. Let me talk to her. She's tough. She'll understand. But Sarah, maybe you should consider moving. This woman sounds dangerous. I'm not moving. The words came out harder than Sarah intended. David, I spent everything I had on this house. I've put my life back together here. I'm not running away. Because some bitter woman can't handle having a single mother next door. I'm just saying I know what you're saying. But I'm staying. I'm fighting this. At 9 a.m., Sarah's doorbell rang. She opened it to find Mrs. Chen from across the street, holding a casserole dish and looking embarrassed. I brought you some food, Mrs. Chen said quietly. I saw what happened. I'm so sorry. Thank you. That's very kind. Can I come in? There's something I need to tell you. Sarah led her to the kitchen, where Mrs. Chen set down the casserole and wrung her hands nervously. I should have said something before, Mrs. Chen began, about Helen Morrison. But I was scared. Scared of what? She did the same thing to the Petersons, the family who lived in your house before you. Sarah's coffee mug stopped halfway to her lips. What do you mean? They had a pool, too. Not as nice as yours, but Helen hated it. She filed complaint after complaint, made their lives miserable. Finally, they just filled it in themselves and moved away. Mrs. Chen's voice dropped to a whisper. But before they left, things got really bad. Someone slashed their tires, spray-painted their garage, broke their mailbox. They were terrified. Did they report it? They tried. But Helen was too smart. Nothing could be traced back to her. The police said it was probably teenagers. Sarah felt a chill. How many people know about this? Most of the longtime neighbors. But nobody talks about it. We're all scared of becoming her next target. Mrs. Chen, would you be willing to testify about what you saw, about the pattern of harassment? Mrs. Chen hesitated. I have grandchildren who visit. I can't risk, I understand. But she's in jail now. And if we don't stop her, she'll just do this to someone else. Before Mrs. Chen could answer, Sarah's phone rang. Marcus again. Sarah, we have a problem. Helen Morrison made bail an hour ago. Sarah's blood went cold. What? Her lawyer argued that she's not a flight risk, has community ties, no prior record. Judge set bail at $50,000. She's out. She destroyed my pool with concrete, and she's out in 12 hours. It's not ideal, but it's how the system works. However, Sarah woke to the sound of her car alarm screaming at 2:47 a.m. She stumbled to her bedroom window. Her Honda Civic sat under the streetlight, its headlights flashing in sync with the ear-splitting wail. The windshield was spider-webbed with cracks, and something dark was splattered across the hood. The alarm shut off as she approached, leaving an eerie silence that felt more threatening than the noise. Red paint. Slashed, rubber peeling away from the rims like wounded skin. Classic intimidation, Officer Rodriguez said when she arrived 20 minutes later. Designed to make you feel unsafe? Isolated? She photographed the damage from multiple angles. Any idea where Helen Morrison is staying since she can't come home? Question is, are you getting the message they intended? Sarah looked at the destroyed car, then at the concrete wasteland that had been her pool. The message is that she wants me to give up and move away, like the others, and I'm not going anywhere. But as Rodriguez drove away, Sarah felt the first real crack in her resolve. The car was one thing, insurance would cover it. But this felt different, more personal. She was still standing in her driveway when David's truck pulled up at 6 a.m. He got out, It looks like you're being stalked by a psychopath. David walked around the car, shaking his head. Emma's coming this weekend. What if she'd been here? What if she'd seen this? Faced the driveway. If she'd been staying over, she would have seen the whole thing. I'll handle it, Sarah said. She's not supposed to be within 500 feet of my property. Can you prove she was here? Can you prove she did this? Sarah couldn't answer because he was right. Helen was too smart to get caught on camera, too careful to leave evidence. Just like with the Petersons, I know you don't want to run, but maybe you should consider it, just temporarily. David, I can't just abandon my life because some bitter woman. This isn't about being bitter anymore, Sarah. This is about being dangerous. After David left, Sarah called Marcus. Are my options? Did you report it? Police just left. Sarah, I've been doing more research. Helen Morrison has been involved in 4 separate restraining order cases over the past 15 years. What kind of harassment? Always deniable, always just under the legal threshold. Until now, so what changed? You did. You're forcing her into uncharted territory. Sarah felt a chill. She opened it to find a young woman in her 20s, professionally dressed, holding a clipboard. Ms. Martinez. I'm Jennifer Walsh from Meadowbrook Realty. What? I have several interested buyers. I'm not selling my house. Jennifer's smile faltered. Well, someone called our office and said you were looking to relocate quickly. Family emergency or something? Who called? I'm not sure. The message was taken by our receptionist. After Jennifer left, Sarah called the real estate office. Of all the problems you've been having, did she leave a name? Sell. She called a realtor and told them I wanted to put the house on the market. That's actually actionable. Impersonating you to a business, interfering with your property rights. Not just for me, but for Emma. She's coming this weekend. Maybe Emma should stay with David this weekend, just until we get a handle on this. That evening, Sarah sat in her kitchen, staring at her phone. She needed to call David, needed to tell him that Emma couldn't visit. The admission felt like defeat. Her phone buzzed. Dad says the pool is broken, but we can still have fun. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She couldn't do it, couldn't give Helen that victory. At 9 p.m., her doorbell rang again. Sarah Martinez, he asked when she opened the door. Yes, delivery for you. Someone wanted to apologize. Sarah took the flowers' white lilies, the kind used for funerals. The card read, "So sorry for your loss." She called the florist. They had no record of the order. Cash payment, anonymous delivery. Sarah was still holding the flowers when her phone rang. You should have taken the first offer, a woman's voice said. An hour, her house was swarming with police. They dusted for fingerprints, took statements, analyzed the flowers. No evidence, no proof. She's smart, Rodriguez said. What if she makes a mistake that hurts someone? We'll catch her before that happens. But Rodriguez's confidence felt hollow. Helen had been playing this game for decades. The police left. Sarah sat in her living room with all the lights on. She'd checked every lock 3 times, set the alarm, even moved a chair in front of the back door. His voice was tight. With worry, Sarah, I'm coming to get Emma tomorrow. She's not staying there. David, please, no. This woman is escalating. I won't risk Emma's safety. You're right, the words came out. Like broken glass, you're absolutely right. Sarah, no, I get it. I'm being selfish. After hanging up, Sarah poured herself a glass of wine and sat by the window, looking out at the concrete wasteland. Helen had won another round. Sarah's daughter couldn't even visit her own mother's house. At 12:43 a.m., Sarah's security system chimed. Motion detected in the backyard. The concrete slab where her pool had been was darker in one spot, as if someone had poured something on it. Sarah called 911 again, but by the time police arrived, there was nothing to see. The concrete looked normal. Helen had been there, had been close enough to touch the concrete, to stand where Sarah's pool used to be. She'd forgotten she even had a landline it came with the house, and she'd never bothered to disconnect it. Hello, this is your final warning. The same disguised voice. Pack your bags and leave, or I'll make sure you regret it. Helen, stop this, please. I know you're scared, but I'm not scared of you, you pathetic little girl. I'm offering you mercy. Take it while you can. The line went dead. She thought about the Petersons, about the burned pool house, about Mrs. Chen's fear. She thought about her sanctuary, her fresh start, her refusal to run, and then she thought about something else. Anywhere, the number thought. Sarah's hands trembled as she scrolled through the Meadowbrook Survivors Facebook. Group at 6:23 a.m. Each post was a testament to Helen Morrison's systematic cruelty, spanning nearly 2 decades. Posted by Jen P_2019, she killed our dog, antifreeze, in his water bowl. We could never prove it, but Max was healthy until the day after we refused to remove our garden shed. Posted by Mike Carr_2015, the final straw was when she called CPS on us, claimed we were neglecting our kids because they played in the backyard after 7 p.m. The investigation was hell. Posted by Susan K_2008, she burned down our pool house 3 days before we moved. Fire department said it was electrical, but we knew. We all knew. Sarah screenshot every post, every comment, every piece of evidence. 23 families over 18 years, all driven from their homes by the same woman using the same escalating tactics. Her phone rang. Marcus, Sarah, where are you with the case prep? Courts, in 6 weeks. Marcus, I found something. A Facebook group of Helen's previous victims were not dealing with a neighbor dispute, were dealing with a serial predator. How many victims? 23 families. She's been perfecting this for decades. Sarah's voice was steady now, focused. I need subpoenas for phone records, social media accounts, property records. If we can establish the pattern, we can put her away for years. Sarah, that's incredible work. But are these people willing to testify? I'm about to find out. After hanging up, Sarah began reaching out to the group members. The responses came quickly, and they were unanimous. They wanted justice. For the first time in 20 years, someone was willing to fight Helen Morrison with evidence instead of just enduring her abuse. At 9 a.m., Sarah was on a video call with Jennifer Peterson, now living in Oregon with her family. When Helen called you after we moved, Jennifer said, I thought it was just checking on the house, but she kept asking about our new address, our kids' schools. It was creepy. How often did she call? Every few months for the first year. Then it stopped. I thought she'd lost interest. Jennifer's face darkened. But now I wonder if she stopped because she found new targets. By noon, Sarah had spoken with 8 former victims. The pattern was identical in every case: escalating harassment, mysterious accidents, strategic intimidation, then the final devastating act that forced them to leave. Helen had refined her methods with each family, becoming more sophisticated, more careful about evidence. But she'd also become overconfident. The landline call was just the beginning of her mistakes. At 2 p.m., Sarah's doorbell rang. She looked through the peephole to see Mrs. Chen, but she wasn't alone. 3 other neighbors stood behind her. The Johnsons from 1251, elderly Mr. Reeves from 1239, and surprisingly, Tom Morrison, Helen's own son. We need to talk, Mrs. Chen said when Sarah opened the door. They gathered in Sarah's living room, the tension palpable. Tom Morrison looked nothing like his mother were. Helen was sharp and cold. He was soft-featured and nervous, constantly running his hands through thinning hair. I came as soon as I heard about the arrest, Tom began. My mother, she's sick, Ms. Martinez. Mentally sick. Has been for years. Tom, Mrs. Chen said gently, tell her what you told us. Tom's hand shook as he spoke. She's done this before. Multiple times, every place we lived when I was growing up, there was always a neighbor she fixated on, someone she decided didn't belong. He looked up at Sarah with haunted eyes. She drove a family out of our neighborhood in Phoenix. They had a little girl, maybe 6 years old. My mother convinced herself they were drug dealers because the husband worked late hours. What happened? She planted drugs in their car, then called the police. The father was arrested, lost his job. They had to move back in with the wife's parents. Tom's voice cracked. The little girl cried for weeks. I was 12, and I knew it was wrong, but my mother said she was protecting the neighborhood. Mr. Reeves cleared his throat. We should have stopped her years ago. After the Petersons, after the Hendersons, before them. We all knew, but we were too scared to act. Why now? Sarah asked. Because you fought back, Mrs. Johnson said. You didn't just disappear like the others. You made us realize we could have done something all along. Tom reached into his bag and pulled out a manila folder. These are my mother's journals. She's kept detailed records of every campaign, names, addresses, strategies that worked, ones that didn't. She treats it like a hobby. Sarah opened the folder with trembling hands, page after page of Helen's meticulous handwriting documenting her systematic destruction of families, photos of properties before and after harassment campaigns, lists of effective pressure points, pets, children, financial stress, and there, on the most recent pages, was Sarah's name. Her daily routine, Emma's visit schedule, David's work address. "She's been watching me for months," Sarah whispered. "Before you even moved in," Tom confirmed. "She researched the house sale, your background, your divorce. She planned this entire campaign before you unpacked your first box." Mrs. Chen leaned forward. "Tom, show her the other thing." Tom pulled out his phone and played a video. It was Helen in her garage, mixing concrete at 2 a.m., talking to herself. "Stupid woman thinks she can come into my neighborhood and disrupt everything I've built." Helen's voice was clear on the recording. "Well, she'll learn. They all learn eventually. Some just need more convincing than others." The video showed Helen loading the concrete mixer onto a dolly, wheeling it towards Sarah's yard. It was dated 3 days ago, clear evidence of her violation of the restraining order. "Why are you doing this?" Sarah asked Tom. "She's your mother, because she needs help, and this is the only way she'll get it. And because," his voice broke, "because I can't let her hurt any more children. I have kids of my own now." Sarah immediately called Marcus and Officer Rodriguez. Within an hour, her house was once again full of investigators, but this time they had everything they needed. The journals, the video evidence, testimonies from multiple victims, proof of a pattern spanning 2 decades. "This changes everything," Rodriguez said, looking through Helen's journals. "This isn't criminal mischief anymore. This is stalking, harassment, conspiracy, possibly RICO violations, if we can prove it's organized criminal activity." "What does that mean for sentencing?" Sarah asked. "Years, not months." "And mandatory psychological evaluation." At 4 p.m., as the police were finishing their evidence collection, Sarah's phone rang. Unknown number. She put it on speaker, with Rodriguez's permission. "You think you're so smart?" Helen's voice was different. "No, raw, unhinged. But you have no idea what I'm capable of." "Mrs. Morrison, this is Officer Rodriguez with Meadowbrook PD. You're violating the terms of your bail by contacting Ms. Martinez." Silence. "Then you can't prove anything." "Actually, we can. We have video evidence of you violating the restraining order. We have your journals documenting 20 years of harassment campaigns, and we have your son's testimony, Tommy." Helen's voice cracked. "Tommy wouldn't. He's a good boy. He loves his mother. Mrs. Morrison, where are you right now?" "Somewhere you'll never find me. But I can see Sarah's house just fine." Sarah's blood went cold. She ran to the window, scanning the street, the neighboring yards. Anywhere Helen might have a line of sight to her house. "Ma'am, you need to turn yourself in," Rodriguez said. "I've spent 40 years building the perfect neighborhood, perfect families, perfect homes, perfect standards, and I won't let some trashy divorced woman destroy what I've built." "Mrs. Morrison," the line went dead. Rodriguez immediately called for backup and a neighborhood sweep. Within minutes, the street was crawling with police cars. They found Helen 20 minutes later. She was in Sarah's backyard, standing on the concrete slab where the pool had been, holding a gasoline can and a lighter. Her clothes were dirty, her makeup smeared, her perfect composure finally shattered. "It's mine," she said when the officers approached. "This whole neighborhood is mine. I've protected it, improved it, made it what it is, and I won't let her ruin it." "Ma'am, put down the gasoline and the lighter," Rodriguez called out. "You don't understand. She doesn't belong here. None of them belonged here. But I fixed it. I always fix it." Sarah watched from her back door as the woman who had terrorized her family was finally revealed for what she truly was. Not a concerned neighbor protecting community standards, but a broken person whose need for control had twisted into something monstrous. Mrs. Morrison Rodriguez said gently, "It's over. Put down the lighter." Helen looked around at the officers surrounding her, then at Sarah standing in her doorway. For a moment, her face showed something almost like confusion, as if she couldn't understand how her perfect system had fallen apart. "I was protecting them," she said quietly. "I was protecting everyone." "I know you thought you were," Rodriguez said, "but this isn't the way." Helen dropped the gasoline can. The lighter followed a moment later, clattering against the concrete that had once been Sarah's sanctuary. As they led Helen away in handcuffs, she looked back at Sarah one last time, "You don't know what you've done," she said. "Without me, this neighborhood will fall apart." "No," Sarah said, stepping forward. "Without you, it can finally heal." 6 months later, Sarah sat on her new deck chair, watching Emma swim laps in the rebuilt pool. The concrete had been removed, tea